I was actually going to ask you a question about that without the background information. You know, we're talking about inflation and you're talking about increasing of the money supply, but something else is going on here in Europe, similar to what happened in the US, that ECB is debasing the currency by bringing a lot of low quality assets onto the ECB balance sheet. And that ultimately could mean higher purchasing power, higher inflation or less purchasing power, just because the currency is worth less because of asset quality debasement. In other words, you have quantitative easing, but you also have qualitative easing, debasing of the assets of the ECB.
Yes and no. I mean, first of all, any purchases of the ECB of bonds of Italy, Spain, Greece, Ireland or whatever is being sterilized by monetary measures. In that respect, there's a big difference between the approaches of the Bank of England, the Bank of Japan or the Federal Reserve in the United States. Secondly, I want to point out one thing, and I'm very shocked about that. The fact is that European countries are, in my eyes, in a much better shape than they are reported to be. To give you a clue, take Ireland. Ireland went under the umbrella of the European mechanism in October 2010. At that time, Ireland held a liquidity reserve of 25% of GDP, 47 billion. And they wouldn't have needed the capital markets until end of 2013. And these aspects are absolutely not discounted in financial markets. Let's talk about Italy, yes. They have a debt of 120% of GDP. They stood at 114% of GDP when they entered in 1999 into the euro, so we have an increase of 6% after the harshest crisis since 1929-32. In the same time frame, the US indebtedness, if you take the public debt from the US Treasury, we had an increase from less than 50% to 100%. That is a bit of a dynamic, not the 6% of Italy. The next point is Italy is rich. The government owns so many parts of the economy, so we shouldn't only look at the debt, but we also have to look at the assets of the government. Italy has got a primary surplus of 3% of GDP. That's the best number in the Eurozone. Why don't we discuss these things? We have currently a situation where there's an aggressive speculation against Eurozone countries where they just look at negative aspects and they don't focus on positive aspects, and they also don't focus on the progress of reforms. Go back to Ireland. Ireland is performing very well. They were marked down by rating agencies aggressively within a month. Now things improve. Why don't we see a grade up? If you grade down quickly, you should grade up quickly. It's not happening. This is ridiculous. Talk about Spain. Spain has a debt-GDP ratio of 68%. Germany has got 83, but Spain is in danger of going bankrupt. They managed to get down the building industry from 11% of GDP to 4% within the last 3 years. Nobody talks about it. And the whole structure of this country is absolutely in order. They are, together with Germany, leading in the technical environment of alternative energies, etc. They are second biggest supplier of car components, etc. So things are not as dire as they are reported.
Why are people focusing on the negative rather than the positive? Is it a reflection of the fact that, you know, in the post-Lehman Brothers collapse, everybody's worried about, you know, what's going to be the next collapse, and therefore they ignore the positives and just focus on the negatives?
Yes and no, but I think there's a political side to it. I mean, look at the Eurozone. The Eurozone has got the debt-GDP ratio of 85% currently. The UK stands at 90, the US 100, and Japan at 230. So given the debt-GDP ratio, we are basically top of the pack. Look at the new debt, 2009, Eurozone 6.3, US more 11, UK 11, Japan more than 10. 2010, 6% Eurozone, US 12, UK 11, Japan somewhere towards the 20s and 30s. This year, Eurozone 4.3, US 9, and the UK at 10, and Japan more than 10. Again, we are outperforming all of the others. We are champion of the reform agenda. We implemented the first reforms back in the fourth quarter 2009. No other region of the world has had more severe reforms than the Eurozone. And this basically top performer within the Western industrialized world, Japan, UK, US, This top performer is being attacked by speculation. Now let's talk why. So I think there's a political taste to it, and the political taste is clearly as writing on the wall. The US is doing no reforms, is having high indebtedness, still lots of structural problems being unresolved, having a government which is not able to implement reforms due to the standstill between Democrats and Republicans, but it's out of the focus. Europe is the focus. The UK has got a very weak economic environment. They are not hitting the targets of debt reduction, but nobody cares. But if it happens in the Eurozone, everybody cares. So we have an asymmetric approach of financial markets, and to me this has got a very, very big political taste. And I think it's a scandal. Yeah. We shouldn't bring the best performing region to the slaughterhouse. It wouldn't make sense in my eyes.
But how's this going to play out? Because it does look like the vultures are circling and focusing on, you know, the periphery, taking them out one by one, or planning to, or at least that's what it seems to be headed.
From time to time I'm invited into Berlin, and what I've been saying throughout the last 18 months is we need ring fencing in the Eurozone. And they wouldn't have listened. What is happening now is a sort of ring fencing with the EFSF. And I want to point out one more thing. The FSF and putting leverage onto it is one thing. The other thing is the ECB. The ECB has got reserves amounting 383 billion euros. So that's lots of firepower. And I think they understood the message, that this is not only a thing where the market is discounting fairly, but that this is also a competition regarding power.
Yeah. Do you believe the euro then is going to get through this crisis?
I'm positive, because from what I hear from the central banking side, from the political side, is that they understand the topic now more completely, at least, as they did before July 2011.
Mm-hmm. But is Northern Europe going to have to bail out Southern Europe?
Up to a certain extent, yes, but I'm not having a problem with that. As I said, I think the Italian fundamentals are much better. In that respect is the current interest rate they pay at the capital markets for 10-year bonds at more than 6%, quite a bonanza. I wouldn't buy any German bond at the current stage. I would buy Irish bonds, I would buy Spanish bonds and Italian bonds, because these countries are well on the way. The point is, well, we have to take care that there is no disintegration of the Eurozone. The disintegration of the Eurozone would simply have a psychological shock effect on Europe, and then reforms and the progress of reforms will not be discounted at all.